So guys, this is the topic today. I've done a few videos already on my page about this topic, and I think it's something that we do need to discuss. There's a lot of things that I think English people or potentially British people don't seem to realise about their existence. Kelsa and I, we talk on a spiritual level with a lot of the things, right? We talk about, or we haven't yet, but we will, I'm sure, talk more about the matrix, talking more about programming, talking about the reality that lives in England and the UK, which doesn't reflect the wider society. The UK is very much a bubble. And I think a lot of English people and British people don't seem to really realise that, because, we live in it. I didn't realise it. And I think it's easier for black and brown people or people of other ethnicities to break that programming, because it's not our people, right? It's not our system. So when you go away, or when you go on holiday, or when you go away for longer periods of time, or such as myself who's moved country, I can see things more when I come back to the UK, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. Hi Bev, good to see you. Navicha, not living in Europe, you live in Turkey. I don't live in Turkey. I don't live in Turkey. I don't live in Europe at all. I don't live in the UK at all. Fuji says, I knew I was a slave when they made meal deals more than £3, not my Tesco. Yeah. The price increases really are insane in the UK. When I go back and I see how much things cost, and I even complain where I am, right? I even complain where I am, but when I go back to the UK, I'm just like, Jesus, I could be paying this. So for example, my dentist back in the UK is £75 for a hygienist visit now, and here it's gone up to 45, which was the price 4 years ago in the UK when I left. So I'm like, I'm not going to complain, because when I moved here, I think my hygienist clean was £25 equivalent. So yeah, there's still capitalism where I live, but it's obviously not as bad as the UK. So I try to be grateful with all these kind of things. This is Beth, cheese is so darn expensive. Yeah, oh God, the price of cheese. Best things in life are brown, say, sure they know, but no, they can treat other brown people as subordinates too. Yes, we're going to talk a lot actually about how English people still think that they are slave masters as well. So they are slaves and also slave masters, which is hilarious. And this is why it's up to black and brown people to not tolerate that shit. Not tolerate it. 0000 says, how about full stop, go to the country you're spelled incorrectly from? Does everybody want to correct this person's spelling first and foremost before I go into this person, please? Because English people always come back here and say, how about you go back to where you come from? It's so boring because they've got nothing original to add, because we know that they're at the end of their extinction. But also their spelling is not correct. So yes, please let's all correct his spelling first, or her spelling first. Before we actually move on to the point. So when you say people should go back to their own country, I've already said that I don't live in the UK or Europe. Maybe you missed that point. I'm not in the UK. I didn't want to have anything to do with you people or your culture at all. I do come back from time to time. I was there last week. Gave me acne. Look at all the spots the UK gave me last week. Last week. Of course I heard my accent because I was born in the UK. Honestly, these people are so stupid. Ella Haynes, they are too dense for you. Yeah, exactly. This is what happens when we have people like this. The conversation seems to always go down, but this is standard. We like to show people exactly for who they are. Yeah, thank you, Eve. You're just jealous she speaks well. Yeah, they always come here and they always make comments about my hair, about my appearance, about my accent, all of these things, rather than actually discussing the topic on the screen, which is, do English people know they are slaves? They're like, listen to that girl's accent. Like, that's got nothing to do with what we're actually talking about. Yes, I was born in Britain. I was born in the colonial system that was Britain. I was unfortunately not born in my motherland, and that's the story for a lot of people, because of what? Colonization. Yeah, it's a thing. And the funny thing is, right, English people now are saying, oh, colonization has been done to the UK. Oh, so So now you think that colonization is bad. Everything is also always so funny with English people, right? It's always, oh, it's great when we do it, but when anyone else does it, it's absolutely terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So 007 wants to come up and maybe give us something intelligent to add to the conversation. Yeah. 000, how are you today?
How are you doing, Shakti? How are you doing?
I'm good. Your microphone, I think, is a bit quiet. Could you speak a bit louder to the microphone? So your mic? No, we can't hear you.
I'm really struggling to not say racial slurs in it.
Okay, disconnect. Why would you want to come up and just to add your voice to say racial slurs? Like, you will literally prove the point of stupidity. If you cannot communicate, it sounds like Tukan. Yeah, it could be. If you have the inability to communicate like I am, you see how different we are as people. Yeah? You see how different we are as people. Truly. I'm just going to change the way that this looks. How do we actually do it again? Hold on. So we can do, oh yeah, is it this? The layout of how this looks. Yeah, this is what I wanted actually. Is this the one? I think so. Yes, this is what I want. Yes. So you guys can come up and discuss the topic. Do English people know they are slaves? Almost viral. How are English people slaves? Okay, I can give you several examples as to why they're slaves. On my page, I talk about their national anthem. God save the king. Okay, I'm going to change the background so you can see the lyrics to the national anthem. If you know it off the top of your head, you should know. You'll be like, well, where does it talk about the people? All it does is talk about serving the king, right? Serving their master. Right? And when I said on my page it's a slave song, all English people were just like, no, we just love our king. I'm like, you're literally proving my point. You're proving my point. So it's going to be a bit wild in the background. Maybe I can change this background actually so it looks a bit better. Give me a minute. I think maybe I can do it to, is it this one? A little bit. Yeah, so it looks a little bit better there, right? So it says, long live our noble king, God save the king. It's not fully on there. Long to reign over us, okay? Reign over us. You have a king, a master, reigning over you. There's other verses actually of the national anthem, which of course you don't sing because your government doesn't want you to sing these verses. So verse 2, O Lord our God, arise, scatter our enemies and make them fall, confound their politics, frustrate their knavish tricks. On thee our hopes we fix, God save us all. So this is all about our enemies. We've got so many enemies. We need to crush the enemies. Okay. Third verse, says, not in this land alone, but be God mercies known. And it's all behind there. But it's actually about brothers. It's about going to other nations and make people see that actually we should all be brothers. So that's actually quite a good verse, that one, verse 3. Yeah. Other countries, other nations, we should actually be one family the world over. And the last verse, though, is really interesting. So we're going to go to the last verse. The last verse, if you can see down there, even though it's behind the text, it says, Lord grant that Marshal Wade, Savvy Mighty Aid, Victory Brig, may he sedation rest, about the rebellious Scots to crush. So, again, this UK national anthem took out all of these verses, made it focus on the king, and forced the Scottish people also to sing this national anthem when it doesn't have their best interests in mind either. And that's not great, is it, guys? That's not great at all. And I think a lot of people need to really actually understand what the national anthem is, what it's for, what it does, because when you start to sing things blindly, then that actually does mean that you are a slave to the systems, which is exactly what I'm saying to you guys. Stop singing things willingly without questioning what things mean. We've got a few people who want to come up onto the panel. We've got Loch Ness and then also Jack. Loch Ness, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you? Thank you for actually doing this. There's a lot of history in Scottish that the English done to us, and it gets covered up because they keep saying, "Oh, well, Scotland signed a union," but people need to understand what happened to Scotland before the union signed the Treaty of the Union. Sorry, I don't know if I've got an echo here.
Yeah, let me put my microphone in mute because I think that's a little
So
bit of a
that
problem.
song, the lyrics in that song was about the Jacobite uprising.
Yeah, do you want to continue on, Loch Ness? I have to mute my microphone in the background because I think there's some feedback.
I'm just trying to
do you
find
want to
the charger
tell?
from my laptop.
Yeah, do you want to tell? Is there a delay, I think, as well? Maybe. Do you want to continue telling people a little bit about the Scottish history? Because that is very much important. There's a reason why I always talk about English and I always separate English. And people try to say, oh, you're against the British. I'm like, no. I make it very clear that Scottish is separate, that Irish is separate, that Welsh is separate. My focus is always on the English. So yes, do you want to educate the people, please? Loch Ness. Thank you.
Yeah, so in the 12th century, there was a battles of independence in Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. So it goes further back than that, but there was a battles of independence. Then that started. Then when they got independence from England, the Declaration of Arbroath, you can Google it, was signed, and that was signed to the Pope, and it was sent to him and said that we are different from the English people. We are Scottish. Just when I came on when you were talking about the national anthem of that lyric, and it was about the Jacobites. So when the Jacobites were fighting, it was who was it? William of Orange came on the throne. He got invited in, so they say, but it was a massacre that happened, and there was Irish Jacobites, there was some English Jacobites, there was Jacobite risings in Ireland, the Battle of the Boyne. That was a fight between the Williamsons, who was in favour of William of Orange, and then the Jacobites, who was in favour of a Stuart king. The Stuart kings themselves, I think they came from Norman days, but you have to, when we think of Scotland, it was a complicated relationship. The lowland clans did get absorbed into a kind of Norman feudalism, but they also fought for Scotland's independence because of the Anglo-Saxons and the Jutes that they were invading. So it is a long history, but we do see ourselves as Scottish rather than British. And so when the Parliament got absorbed into, so the Parliament got dismantled, people would argue that it was annexed and we were colonised in a way because we're speaking English language. They dismantled the clans, they stopped us from wearing tartan. This was after the Jacobite rebellions in the Highlands. So there is Black Watch that was formed around that time was by the British government. So that was after, So 1707 was when the treaty was signed. Then the Scottish Parliament was dissolved, and the King at the time moved. He already moved his base in 1603 when it was a union of the crowns into England, because he was the ruler of all the three kingdoms. So in 1707 the treaty was signed. A lot of the laws was made from London rather than Scotland because we didn't have a parliament, so that's when we would say that our laws, while people argued that we remained independent in the law system and an education system, it was very highly influenced by Westminster. Black Watch was formed from the British government.
I'm just going to interrupt you to ask you a couple of questions, if that's okay. Thank you so much, Loch Ness. Someone in the comments section, oh, Fox, did you ask Loch Ness to come up to educate us on this topic? Yeah, she's Scottish. Yes, I talked about Scottish. She's Scottish. She's going to know a lot more than perhaps yourself, and definitely a lot more than me. So thank you so much for the history there, Loch Ness. I've just got a few questions as well. So you brought up the colonisation, and I think I really when I talk about this subject and I talk about the other countries as part of the United Kingdom, right, it's very much something that doesn't get spoken about enough, I think, generally. And you brought up the fact that, of course, there is this union, and I see it happen all the time where people will say, oh, well, Scotland, they've got this union that makes them complicit, blah, blah, blah. I think there's not enough realization to the fact that it was, of course, the king at the time that dragged a lot of people into that situation to start with, and the fact that there is still a lot of rebellion that, of course, goes on in Scotland to this day. I mean, I think I can probably tell from your voice and the fact that you came up to speak is that, of course, you're probably very disappointed by the independence vote of a few years ago.
That would be because there was many reasons. There wasn't a concrete plan around that time. They threatened us with the European Union, saying the only way Scotland can stay within the European Union is you vote for. Another thing was, it was billboarded, so people that wasn't knowledgeable enough, they got told, if you don't know, vote no. And it might be a Mandela effect, but I remember this been on the telly, I remember this being spoken about. Another thing is, and it's still repeated today, and I've once in a generation. So people maybe would be like, oh, no. You know, what if you get independence and it fails? So I think with a concrete plan, the governments need to work together and say, okay, what if it does fail? What's going to happen? Is there a backup plan? The same way, okay, Brexit failed, and there's a backup plan. We still have connections now to the European Union slowly, but Keir Starmer and Labour Party is trying to get some more connections back. But something like that in action. Another thing,
I think what's really important is that point you've just made there, right, about the if you don't know, vote no. It was, of course, the similar sort of manipulation of the Brexit vote, which you rightly brought up as well, is that, you know, these governments, the British government, we can, of course, talk about the fact that they know how to manipulate people really well. And I always bring up also the fact that there was the referendum, was it in 2016, to change the way we were voting? So first past the post, I don't know if you remember this, Loch Ness, how it was worded was so confusing in the vote. Are you old enough to vote at that time? I don't know how old you are.
Oh yeah, I was old enough. I was 18 when I voted for independence, and I was really gutted, and so were a lot of Scots.
Okay, so before then, though, before the independence vote, there was actually a vote to change the way that we were voting. So it was changed. It was changed to be first past the post. So what the UK does, and actually the funny thing is, I think the most clearest vote we've had was the Brexit vote, because it was just yes or no. It was just yes or no, right? So that was very clear. But when it came to actually changing the voting system, I remember thinking, I'm definitely going to change the voting system. I want this system to be completely overhauled. But when it came to actually voting for what we wanted to change, they worded it in such a terrible way, on purpose, of course, because they didn't want to change the system, because the system was working for the government. It was working because they knew that was either going to be Tory or Labour. And of course, the way that the governments have moved is that Tory and Labour have merged to become one party. Reform is also ex-Tory, you know, so all of these three main
Scotland
parties.
Doesn't like Tories. They've never voted for Tories once, yet we're left with a Tory government.
There you go. Well, yeah, I think it was only back in
Scotland.
of course, we've had many prime ministers over time that have not been voted for in the UK. So there's a lot of manipulation going on. And so the reason why I say this topic, do English people know they are slaves? Because of how much manipulation is actually done to them. The government is one thing and voting is one thing. And the fact that it pisses me off so much and pissed me off so much with this, oh, we've got to do tactical voting. We've got to do tactical voting. Like, you've got no mindset of your own. That's a slave mindset. If you're following what everyone else is telling you and telling you what to do, that makes you a slave. As I've been voting for Green for over 10 years. And I remember thinking around me, like, why does nobody vote Green? Like, over 10 years. Why? Why does nobody have their own independent thought? Because it's sheep thinking. And it's because there are always people at the top who are manipulating. And I mentioned this earlier, I don't know if Kelsa is still here, about the fact that the UK is very much a matrix, is very much a system. I don't see the UK as a country. I always see it as a business and a system. And there are too many people in that business and system who uphold this business. And this is no fault of your own, because we all did it. I did it too, and I'm sure a lot of people do it too. You know, we were brought up in the UK to make you think that it is a superior country, that everything is great. But when you come out of the matrix and you wake up and you actually see it for what it is, you never go back. You never go back. And there are still too many people who think that the UK is an exceptional country, but they've never left and they've never seen anything. And they, again, continue to uphold this bullshit story about the UK, not realizing that it's actually hurting themselves directly. That happens a lot.
It definitely is an imperialist system. Even when you're looking at conform of the Scots, Remedios conform in many ways. There was William of Orange. What was it? The Glencoe massacre. He told the Campbells to go in and unalive the McDonald's. You know, then the Fort William was a fort for William of Orange, but before it was William of Orange, it was Cromwell who invaded the Fort William and unalived people there. Cromwell went to Scotland and Ireland and sent a lot of people as quote-unquote slaves. I know it is different from chattel slavery. I'm not comparing them, but yeah, indulger servants, I think they call it now. I can't say that right, sorry. They went into the Dunbar, so there was a Battle of Dunbar, and see the ideologies of some of the unionist parties, even from Scotland. There was this circulation of, they're making a jokes and say there was a Lothian problem with the lack of housing, and he quoted, well, maybe we should follow what Cromwell done. You know, and Boris Johnson, he shared this post online and went viral. You can type in Boris Johnson anti-Scottish sentiment, and that was saying that we are a barbaric race. There's Scottish cringe in Scotland, and a lot of people do speak about it. It's almost like, we don't like being Scottish. Why do we need to be Scottish? You know, we don't have that pride. And the past 20, 30 years, I think we are seeing a lot of people bring back that pride and getting involved with the Gaelic language, even the Scots language as well. The Gaelic, the board for the Gaelic language is Borna Gaelic, and they've been working together with the Scottish Language Centre as well to promote both of the languages. They're now protected by law. There's also a lot of people learning about history that never get taught in school. That's another one. See, if Africa or India or anywhere in the world, right, to Scotland because they love Scotland, when they're taking an immigration test, they're asking about English history. In school, we learn about English history. We didn't learn about Scottish history. And there was this video that I seen, and they were so annoyed. And it says, but I want to live in Scotland. You know, I want to learn about Scotland. And why am I having to learn about to do an immigration test? And they were saying, oh, King George and, you know, Queen Elizabeth and that, and it's like, they're not our queens and kings. You know, our kings of royal family were the Stuarts that did get overruled by William of Orange.
And that's the problem, right? That's the problem, is that the fact that the rest of the UK always gets overlooked constantly, because these Anglo-Saxon invaders came and completely disrespected the indigenous peoples to the lands, completely disrespects people's cultures, people's beliefs, people's religions, people's practices. All of these things get completely disrespected because we know England doesn't really have their own culture, their culture is colonization. Their culture is just ruining other people's existences. And we've got James QS99 in the comment section that says, stop having a victim mentality and blaming others for your poor life decisions. Has anybody come up here and said anything about life decisions? This is what happens when English people get involved in the conversation. They have this own narrative in their head.
It's because they don't like the fact that
we're not even talking about anything to do with poor life decisions. We've talked about the government. We've talked about history, we talk about those things. We've not actually brought up anything personal yet. I've talked about how I've left the UK, and that's literally it. So the funny thing is, of course, is that English people, again, as part of their working for their slave masters, because they're slaves, is that they will constantly uphold the British government, the royal family, the country as a business. And like I've said, not really understanding that it actually affects them first and foremost. Thank you, Loch Ness. Just stick around. I'm just going to move to the next person. We've got somebody else up here on the comment section, on the panel, I think. We've got Love. Love, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good. You'd actually know me as Minseo.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
how are you?
I'm good. I actually had sent your live out to the lads because I wanted them to hear your stuff. I think you're really good.
Thank you. So what would you like to add to the conversation today? So this is it, is do English people know they are slaves? So we've talked a little bit, the reason why we ended up talking about Scotland is because I've talked about the national anthem, which has 6 original verses. I'm just going to mute you for a second because we've got some feedback. It's got 6 original verses. The last verse is about Scotland, which they took out because they said that basically Scotland is the enemy. So of course, when you stick to the first verse, it just says, God save the king. And again, this is about upholding their leader. And English people don't realize when they sing this song, they are upholding their leader. And I think about back the time, you guys remember when the Queen Mother died? Oh, that shit pissed me off so much. When the Queen Mother died, this is a little bit of a digression, but still on the theme, of course, of the royal family, like how at my school, at least anyway, and I'm pretty sure it was probably at most people's schools, they shut down everything. We had to listen and watch that old lady be buried and put in the ground or whatever it was. And they stopped the whole school. And I was like, I'm not interested. I don't want to watch this shit. The funny thing is my sister's boyfriend plays the trumpet, and they made him play the trumpet in the playground, like the last post or something like that. So it was really annoying. Like, why are you forcing us to actually watch this fucking old decrepit woman go in the ground? I'm so not interested. But Love, I've just invited you to unmute. So what would you like to add to the conversation? Do English people know they are slaves?
Yeah, I doubt it. But I would like to expand when you were there talking about the Queen. So I live in a city in Ireland called Cork, and city centre's kind of really nice. You go a couple of feet out of city centre, really old city, needs a lot of work. The Queen came here to visit, it being her first colony, people not understanding that. They spent millions on flowers and painting of city centre just to make it presentable for our colonizer. And it just blows my mind with the amount of people that had come out to greet her. And this was in a time before I was looking into ongoing psychological colonization and indoctrinating of the people. And when I think back on that time and what they had done and how they went about it and what people participated in, for the person that literally all the tyranny that we have had on this island for 950 years and ongoing, they came out to celebrate the head of that. And how do you argue
really
with the people like
ridiculous.
that?
Yeah, it's really ridiculous just how deep this shit goes. And I think what's annoying these days, of course, is in 2026, there are still some people who refuse to accept that that's a problem. You know, they're still under that brainwashing mindset and mentality that's acceptable. We've got a few comments in the chat as well saying we were never taught about Welsh, Scottish or Irish history unless they were the enemy, of course. Ella Hayes regarding the Queen, the Queen Mum when she died, we got the day off. I look forward to future holidays. Yeah, most definitely. I don't know, has everybody else got a vocal glitch as well? Loch Ness was cutting out a little bit. Are you guys hearing me correctly as well? Is the glitch out? Is the microphone cutting out for love? Is it just me? Can you guys give me some feedback as well? Is it me?
No, I can hear you perfect.
Okay, I think it's on your end then, possibly. Thank you so much for the feedback down there. Yeah, so English people, when it comes to them being slaves, again, this is them upholding all of this bullshit, which treats the Scottish and the Irish terribly. Like I said, they're working for the government, they're working for their own colonizer and their own oppressor. This is Beth says, my great-grandmother was classed as Irish, even though she was born in England. Her parents were Irish. Okay, yeah, nice. Yeah, I think there definitely needs to be a lot more decolonization of British people to start with, really and truly. I think what we're seeing a lot more now, and Minciers, I think you were here when yes, I remember the conversation we actually did have talking about Irish history. I think it was the last time perhaps you were here, about you know, the rise of racism in Ireland and the fact that too many Irish people now are doing the work of the British. Like they really want to be British. They really want to be you know, this Northern Ireland. They're not seeming to want to be part of the you know, the Republic and the United Ireland, which we all want to see. We want to see us independent Scotland. We want to see United Ireland. We want to see these things happen.
Can I comment?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, love is muted. Yes. Yes, Ewan, nice to meet you. Oh, sorry, of course, I'm so sorry. No, I didn't read it properly. That's why I just say you're infinite.
No problem. I'm dyslexic as well. No problem. I'd like to say that many people don't know that their mind is being controlled. They don't understand that words are being used to keep them oppressed, lost, and sad. So a part of the joy may be that they're being told is, if you fight for us, speak for us, and put yourself down, it will open a way. And I'm kind of using the terms I'm using because when slavery came about, don't forget, Britain was not the first. There was the Arab slave trade. However, the chattel slavery,
so
the
slavery
chattel
goes
slavery
right
was
back.
the
I'm just going to
difference.
mute you for a minute, just because I don't want people to get misconstrued, is that slavery does go back to 3,500 BC in modern day, in Mesopotamia, which we know is Iraq. So I think what you're talking about, right, is the transatlantic slave trade. Is that what you're talking about, Your Infinite? Do you want to unmute and clarify? You're Infinite. Hello? I've sent you a request to unmute.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is the foundation of Britain was built on enslaving people's minds and bodies.
Yeah.
The Scottish people happened to get caught up in that. Also, bearing in mind that many Jamaicans, many Caribbeans have Irish blood in them. And one of your contributors mentioned the Jacobean War. The Jacobean War was about land, stealing land and shipping many of those people out of Scotland to many parts of the Caribbean. And there's one theory, maybe somebody can come back to me on it. There's one theory that the actual Jacobeans were what we call Cheddar Man.
Yep.
And that they were doing quite well in Scotland and everybody seemed to get along, probably some fairy story. But anyway, everybody seemed to get along. And then when the Jacobean Wars took place, they shipped many of the Scottish people out so that they could steal their land legally. That's my contribution. And thank you. And thank you for being up here and giving us space to share. Much appreciated.
Scott, so when you say that the Jacobites was the opposite side as well, that were on the side of the British, and I think that's what the problem is in Scotland, and it was like conforming to the British throne. I think the people who did conform did get the land, and you would see today that we still have clan chiefs, and I found that out. And these clan chiefs, when you look into it, if they've got the title Lord and Lady and they want so much concentration. But then if the clans were dismantled, but these people still to get to keep their title, while, you know, there's a lot of homeless people that would have been part of the clans or descendants of the clans. And, Highland clearances, they were also Scots who worked for British, so they don't like the Loyalists don't like anything to do with breaking up the Union or breaking up the whole imperial system. So Unionists are in favour of the Union, of staying together, then it's Loyalists, they're in favour of the imperialist system. With the colonisation of Ireland as well, you would see the Loyalists there in the north. That's why I was saying, if you get somebody in the north, they can speak about their side. The way I see it, it's what's it called? King James the Sixth. He got the throne of England because I think Elizabeth I passed away and she didn't have a heir. But at this point, Ireland was already colonised under English rule. So when he became King of England, he also became King of Ireland through colonisation. And he started planting people from Scotland and England into Ulster. And these became, a lot of it was a nobleman. So when he did transfer to Parliament of Westminster, he brought his noblemen with him. And you still see that today with the loyalism, the 12th of July and the Orange Order. You know, it's a lot of history.
And I think all that stuff is just so bizarre to me. And maybe I'm talking from a place because I'm African descendant, right? So, and I was born in Britain, so I don't have any sort of ties to the land when it comes to this kind of loyalty towards a nationality or a culture. It just doesn't make sense. Like, I can't understand anybody's mindset that is so deep in this stuff, like, especially, as I say, if it doesn't benefit you directly, why would you uphold it? I don't get it. But we do have a Jacobite, someone who's called themselves Jacobite Monty at the top, who obviously wants to bring himself in the conversation as a Scottish person as well. So we're gonna wrap up this Scottish part, because we're going to go back into why English people know we're slaves. So we've talked a bit about Scotland, we talked a bit about Ireland, and I'm going to bring the conversation back to English. But Jacobite, what would you like to add to the conversation before we move to the next point?
That technically, just as what Loch Ness was saying, sorry, I sound a little bit English because I'm Scottish, but I was actually born abroad in the situation. Technically, the Orange Order should be considered themselves a T group because of some of the rhetoric that they say and some of the rhetoric that they decide to spread to people. It's like when we talk about things, I'm sorry to get a little bit political here, when we talk about things like Scottish independence, for example, they call us traitors, they say that we should be lying against the wall and stuff like that. And it's that evil rhetoric that I feel like they don't know that they're slaves either. That you've all been, I'm sorry to say this, English people in the chat as well, you've been colonized as well. You've been taken over. Guess what? Thousands of years ago, you got beat by Norway. Out of all the people, you got beat by Denmark. And guess what? Scottish people, we actually made peace with the Vikings. We actually said, we don't want anything to do with the English. We'll just take, like, I think it was Northumberland, and that's where we'll stop. You can have the rest of England if you want, but let us have that territory. And they agreed to it. So English people, you cannot say that you're the best country in the world. You've been beaten every single time. You've been beaten by Viking. You're beaten by the Arab tribes. And you're also beaten in the Middle East. Look at the state of the British Army now. You're less than 40,000 active military personnel. Do you really think that if we go into a global warfare that you're going to win this? Hell no, you're going to get absolutely crushed. And the only reason why the British Army is so terrible now is that Scottish people are refusing to enlist.
Yeah, and this is why they are actually really trying to take advantage of the Commonwealth. There were so many more marketing drives towards that, and especially as me as a Nigerian descendant, the amount of marketing that we saw there was ridiculous. The British Army, the Nigerians come and fight for us and do that, always trying to get black and brown people to fight this bloody ridiculous, fight for white narcissism, because that's all it is. It's just white narcissism, and it's of course mainly mainly through British. And I think what's really important to note is that, you know, British people do this a lot, English people do this a lot. They'll always say, oh, America's the problem. Like, that's your fucking family. That is your families. Like, stop talking about how these countries and these cultures are just so different. That is your family. That is your blood family in a different land. And this is the thing with English history and English culture, is there is, again, like we were saying, there's so much manipulation and there's so much that they don't see. And I'm glad you brought that up, Jacobite, as well, and also Loch Ness, and everybody else here so far on the panel has understood that English people, we see you now as slaves and you don't see yourself as slaves. It is your job to wake up out of that system. Like, and those of you who are still upholding it, then I'm just laughing. I literally am just laughing at all these people who still don't want to believe, and all these people who still think that it is a benefit to them to be like, yeah, I'm English and we're the best country and this and this. You know, times are changing now. I'm a very intuitive person and I know what's going to happen to the world. I know what's going to happen to the United States, and we know what's happening to Europe, because of course already there is this great replacement theory that you guys need to come up with, because you're not accepting that you're already getting extinct. You're already being exited out of the system because you as British people, English people, have shown that you're not compatible with humanity, invading 171 countries disgracefully and disgustingly. So the universe is exiting you out, unless you are somebody who's actually willing to accept that that's a bad thing and willing to be part of the future, be part of the change, and actually understand that you need to come onto the side of everybody else, because you are literally so insignificant and so small on this grand planet, really and truly. And when you have this narcissism, it makes you think and feel you're more important than you are. And Jacobite, as he's brought up, saying that you literally didn't win anything. You didn't win anything. And you know, the only way that you won these wars, again, was through manipulation and coming with pew-pews. It was not because you were smart. It's not because you were stronger. It's because you were actually the weakest. You were the weakest, and you were defeated many, many times, many, many times. If you even go to the continent of Africa, you were defeated many, many times by female-led armies. By the way, Queen Anne Morenas was one, defeated the Portuguese. This is actually Europeans. You know, and you just had to come back with a pew-pew because you were weak people. In a one-on-one fight, you will lose. You will lose. And Keir Starmer, we can talk a little bit about him. The fact that, of course, he's trying to play both sides, and I don't think people are smart enough to understand that Keir Starmer does have his wonderful bunker somewhere when it all goes down, because, of course, he has a Zionist wife, and the UK actually built Zionism along with the Americas. They created Israel. So it always annoys me when people say, oh, the Zionists are Israeli. They're not Israeli. They are part Israeli, but they're also British. They're also American. Zionism is an ideology. It is an ideology that was created by these Western Europeans. So stop saying it is just Israelis, it's just Jews. It is not. It is not. You need to understand, because look in your country right now, you have people waving an Israeli flag in the UK. You have people being so empathetic towards Palestine because they understand that that is something that they actually do support. They do support the genocides, because British history is full of genocide. It's full of genocide. It is exactly the same thing. You know, you guys have to wake up and realize actually how deep the problem is, how far it spreads, and stop thinking that it's just a small group of people, and stop thinking that it only belongs over there. It's on your fucking doorstep. It's in your next door neighbor's house. It is all around you. It's all around you. Thank you so much, guys, for adding some bits and pieces in the chat. We're going to move now to LFC. LFC, I think you've been up before. LFC, how are you today?
Hi, Fox.
LFC?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you today? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I just wanted to touch upon something. You know, if we look back at something like the Brexit vote, you know what's crazy? I realised that every ethnicity, if you look at Scottish, Welsh, people who identify as Black, British, Pakistani, Indian, even like Jewish, all these groups actually voted to remain. The only majority who voted to leave was the English. And because they had such large numbers, that's who pushed the vote for us to leave. And all the consequences.
it was around London as well. I mean, I don't know, somebody's saying no in the comment section. I'm not sure about that part. But the part that I remember the most was it literally was almost London. It was the entirety of London and the surrounding counties of London that wanted out, which of course is a massive population. And again, it was very much a case of they are obviously very disconnected, very detached to the rest of the country, and how it's, you know, how the rest of the country is seen from the capital. Of course, Loch Ness did bring up the fact that the British government, of course, it's in London. It's very detached from, of course, the Scottish and from Ireland and from Wales. It is so unfortunate that all of these other countries are just not even considered and not even given a platform generally. And that's the craziest thing, I think, is that even when you're in England, you don't see anything really that goes on in Scotland, Wales and Ireland, like not on the news at all. Like, you don't see it.
Fox, like all the other minorities, like us, like the Scottish, like the Welsh, our voices didn't get heard with this vote. Why was this allowed to happen? If true democracy is that if everyone has, you know, sort of a say, but we're all suffering, and they won't admit. You know what the worst thing about it? They won't even admit what they did to us. They think Brexit has not harmed us as much as it has. It's only because they've done it. And I think that's just so cruel when you think about it. And it makes me think, is there any actual way we can come to an agreement with these people, with the English?
So I'm very honest about my vote. I did say that I did vote for Brexit. So I'm a black person that did vote out. And I give my reasons as well, which are as follows, is that when I was doing my research, I realised that the majority of the UK was poor. Really, when I looked at it and I looked at the boroughs and I looked at the statistics, most counties were poor. Right. And I was like, okay, well, I would like to have there more of a better distribution of wealth within the UK. And again, of course, at that time, if I had more sense, I would have actually looked at the government and thought, is this a government that can actually deliver that promise? I didn't know enough. I was very much in my own socialist mindset.
And that's first. It's like choosing, you know, the EU or this government that's ruled by the English. That's what we're ruled by. We're all ruled by the English, and it's like there's no way I'm trusting these people for the benefit of society out of the whole of the UK, because I know their history. These people literally measured the heads of Irish people to say these are not the same class as white as us. We know these people, and so I get what you're saying. It's a hard decision. I think people, you know, were conned into thinking, you know, if the society was more in terms of open to all of our voices, then maybe we could have done something better after Brexit. But the thing is, we're dominated by English people, and that's just the reality.
That's absolutely true. I mean, obviously there was a reason why we were so manipulated during Brexit, because they know that they wanted us to stay in. If you remember, the marketing at the time directly from the government was, we must stay in. There was nothing else. There was no pros and cons. In a democracy, you're supposed to present both sides of the coin and let people make their own decision based on what you present. But of course, the government at the time said you must stay in. And those people who don't trust the government would immediately say, well, I'm not voting for that, then I'm going to vote completely opposite. Then, of course, when you had the Brexit, what do they call themselves, the Brexit Party? Yeah, Nigel Farage's Brexit Party. Anybody who didn't want to be in Europe anymore immediately got put under there. So I'm not going to be part of the Brexit Party. That's not what I voted. And of course, as part of the media, which is also part of manipulation, is that they were only interviewing xenophobes. They were only interviewing racists. They were only interviewing the uneducated. Only later did they start to interview people who had businesses, right, and international trade. So they were talking about actually how their businesses would have been better out of the EU and actually had better partnerships. Though all of those things started to come out after the vote, right? So I think this is what I keep saying on these lives, is that people need to be a lot more smarter than they actually are. There is too much stupidity that lives on the island of the UK, and there are too many people who think that they're smart because they don't have the ability to listen to people people more intelligent because their ego is in the way. I have people coming here all of the time on these lives thinking that they know shit. I don't know everything. So that's why I have other people up on the panel so other people can speak and we can all listen and learn from each other. But I get too many people in the comment section and still too many people who come up on the panel who are just like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, did you actually listen to the conversation? Like, are you listening to anything? No, you're still stuck in your mindset and you just want to come here and be smart. That doesn't actually do anything for anybody. It doesn't help us grow as people. It really doesn't move us forward as a civilization. But again, those people are being exited out of the system. Love and Jacobite, you've both got your hand up. I think Jacobite, you had your hand up earlier. So we'll go to you first and then we'll go to Love.
Yeah, just going to what you said, Foxy, is that it's very dismantled with the parliamentary system that we have right now, is that people representing, let's say for examples, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, so we don't have a direct representative of government. We have a Secretary of State, for example, Secretary of State of Scotland, who, guess what, is not even based in Scotland. He's not even a Scottish MP or a Scottish MSP. He's English. He served as MSP for Perth and Kinross, but he hasn't done anything for it. He spends half his time in London. How can you say that his role literally states that he is there to represent Scottish interests and UK government interests in Scotland, and say, for example, that we'll never be granted an independence referendum? It was a once-in-a-lifetime situation. And he said that we were dividing the goalposts and extending the goalposts of what we were having.
Yeah, that's obviously not looking good, is it? If you've got an English representative up in Scotland, it literally doesn't make sense. But the funny thing is, in my mind, is I'm thinking about English people saying, yeah, well, we've got Pakistanis and we've got Indians. It's the same thing. I can literally hear them like screaming.
Can I comment something on what you're saying there?
Yeah,
it's so funny to see in the weeks of the independence referendum, there was loads of English MPs that came up to Glasgow, and I was watching a video in so they were filming coming up, and they were saying, I don't know if you've seen the video, but it says, these are superior overlords. Wait, I'll put it on.
Welcome, one and all. Yes, yes. Our imperial masters, you're welcome here.
I'll just play that much. I don't want to get took down for copyright. But I just thought it was so funny because they say like Scotland's right to decide and all this, but we have to remember how many, with that, the English MPs coming into Glasgow, like if it's Scotland's right to decide, why are they trying to manipulate the vote in a way? Then it was frightening us with the back.
The thing is, looking at this, can I add something to that, please, Fox? Can I add something to that?
I don't know if Love, did you have something to add to the Scottish thing, or are you going to talk about Ireland? Because we're going to have all the Scottish chat and then we'll move to Ireland.
Yeah, it's kind of all of the islands. For everything that you're saying, all people would have to do is look into the past, look into Brehon law, which English common law destroyed, and it was English common law that gave birth to capitalism. And just to give people Cliff Notes version, in Brehon law, 1,000 years ago on these islands, gay people had rights, women had more rights than they have today, and there was a fair, just system. There was nowhere in Brehon law that capitalism could take hold. And there's many books wrote on this, but the problem is England or English people don't understand that Ireland predates England. Our systems predate England. England was created in the 5th century along with their language, royal family, culture, capitalism, and England as of today is still in control of Ireland's history. And this is why people people don't know any of these things, because just to reach the ears of the ordinary people, the vast majority of us don't benefit from capitalism. It is literally the 1%. If there was a fair, just system and laws before the creating of England, is it not worth researching it to have an idea of who our ancestors were and how they seen these islands?
Absolutely. I am going to move on to capitalism very shortly as well. I think someone else had some last comments to make here. Was it you again, Jacobite?
I think Loch Ness wanted to say something, but I just wanted to quickly say that we actually have a unionist in the chat right now. I'm trying to get him up here to speak to his colonial puppets and see if we can talk some sense into him.
I think also LFC, did you have something that you wanted to add as well before we move on? Because we're going to move to capitalism next.
Yeah, I just remember the Scottish independence vote was when we were still in the EU, and then I believe some years later they voted to remain by a vast majority, and they got kicked out with us when they didn't consent. And I just think that's crazy.
Yeah, it was literally the situation. Sorry to cut you off, Foxy, but it was one of the things that was mentioned in the independence referendum that we would not be forcibly removed from any international institution against our will, and that it would be on us to make that decision. But when the Brexit vote happened, we were just told, right, we're now leaving the EU. This is all us now. We all have to work together. And then all the Scottish people and the Scottish government sat there and went, wait, hold on a minute. Yeah, you literally said to us 2 years prior that you would not take us out of the EU against our own will, and now you're doing this to us. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, there was so much done. So Mossy, we've got Mossy on the panel who's just come up. Hello, Mossy. Is there something you wanted to add to this part of the conversation, or are you going to be here for the next part? We're going to move on to a little bit about capitalism because we've just touched on it then. Mossy? Oh, you're so quiet. You're so in the distance, Mossy. Can you come a bit closer?
Hold on, can you hear me?
No, you are like a little mouse. We can't barely hear you. No, Mossy, we can't hear you. Okay, so capitalism, guys. So this is part of also the conversation as to why do English people realise that they're slaves or not. Capitalism was born in the UK. It was born by a Scottish man. We've got some Scottish guys up here on the panel. Let me get this background a little bit. Just 1 minute, Loch Ness, while I actually introduce this next part, then I'll bring you back in. Let me just change this part. So we're going to look at this for a minute. We probably will only see part of it on the screen, I think. Hold on. Where is it? Oh, is it back here? No. Where is it? That's not it. That's not it. Is that it? Yes, this is it. Okay, it's such a bad screenshot because sometimes when you put the stuff on here, it really stretches everything. So let's just talk about capitalism for a minute. So Adam Smith was a Scottish gentleman who created, well, he actually is known as the father of capitalism. Capitalism actually goes back to the 13th century, but modern capitalism was born in Britain by a Scottish man, Adam Smith. And basically, long story short, capitalism is just there to gain profits. It is just there. It's got nothing to do with socialism, nothing to do with the togetherness of people. This is literally about a bunch of greedy ass motherfuckers who just want to gain wealth. And the UK, how it is and how it's built up is clearly in the case of people not realizing that they are also slaves to capitalism. Materialism is such a massive thing in the UK. And someone who's moved out of the UK and moved out of Europe, when I come back to the UK and I see how people are such slaves to this stuff is honestly beyond me. I have a video on my page about when I went into Selfridges and seeing all the people there. I actually just talked about the women there at that point, but I remember when I went into Selfridges thinking about how I felt before I left the UK, which is I mean, I got a lot of shit. Some of you guys know what I do for a living, and some of you guys don't know. I'm a financial dominatrix, so making money and taking money was very much my thing. I'm very materialistic in my life, multiple properties, multiple cars, designer wardrobe, everything you could think of, money in the bank. When I went back to the UK, I was like, this is interesting to see it from this side, because when I moved out of the UK, I started wearing flip-flops and all kinds of crappy clothes and not giving a shit about how I look and how I feel. None of that stuff, because where I live is very relaxed, like truthfully relaxed. And even when I was here recently getting my nails done, there was a British lady who's lived here for 20 years, and she was like, I'm worried that when I go back to the UK, I'm going to have to dress up more, and I feel like I'm going to be in competition with other people because of how they think and how they feel, and everything is so much pressure there. I'm like, yeah, it kind of is. Even though if people don't see it, it's definitely there mentally, right? There's a mental pressure to compete with other people. And I've said this about jealousy that lives in the UK and this negative mindset that lives there. But seriously, when you come out of it and you go back and you just see it for the system it is very hard to be there, like very, very hard to be there. And yeah, just the fact that so many English people think it's okay to say that things are expensive. And again, this is the English mindset. This is the British mindset. This is a mindset that I used to have. And I remember, so we talked, of course, about Brexit a little bit here on the panel. I remember going on holiday. I spent 1 month traveling around the Balkans in, I think it was the same year, 2016. I can't remember the year. I was traveling around the Balkans for 1 month, and I was in Slovenia. And the tour guide asked me and said, oh, you know, how are people feeling about Brexit? What do you think about it? And I said, in my capitalistic view, well, and my quite conservative view, well, it's every man and woman or child for themselves. You know, you have to make your own money. You have to make your own way in life. The government is not here to provide you with anything. And that's exactly how I still think and feel. But that's, of course, coming from a place where I did want the distribution of wealth to be shared more equally, because I had both a socialist mindset and a capitalist mindset and a conservative mindset, where it's like, I don't feel entitled to anything because I'm an immigrant, descendant of immigrants. But at the same time, when you have a very rich country, as the UK is, the 6th richest country in the world, that stolen wealth should have been shared with the people. But it's not. And again, this capitalism is only reaching and benefiting the 1%. So why, English people, do you think it's great to have all these expensive things? I mean, now you're complaining, only now are you complaining because things are too expensive. But your complaining is so quiet. You're not a revolutionary country. You don't stand up for your government. You don't stand up for yourself at all. Yes, and ... the royal family are the hoarders of the wealth. Yeah, but again, you have so many royalists, and it's kind of going a bit quieter now, but there's no revolution in the UK. People just roll over and take whatever is given to them. And that's what happens. Loch Ness, you got something you wanted to add?
I can't remember what I said. Oh, William Patterson, yeah. So if you look into him, he was born Scottish, but he was the creator of the Bank of England, and I think he was involved in the Darien scheme. He created a fund for King William III, who's the William IV, and I'm sure, don't quote me on it, but it was when I was studying at university, I did look at parts of the Wealth of Nation, and even though capitalism was birthed from imperialism, I'm sure Adam Smith's theory was that he didn't think that going to other countries and exploiting land is a good thing, so he didn't have a preference for colonialism, but he wanted to build the empires within the land, pretty much. So exploitation of the land, creating wealth of the land, and that's to your nations. I've not looked at the full.
There's a link
what was
between...
relevant to my course.
Yeah, there's a link between, this is going to be so terrible in the background. So, Adam Smith laid the groundwork for model capitalism in 1776. And also there is a link, of course, between capitalism and slavery. The relationship is complex, with some historians arguing that capitalism replaced slavery because of its perceived efficiency and morality and moral superiority, while others suggest that capitalism and slavery were actually working in combination with each other. So it should be very apparent to English people that them not realizing that they're slaves and the tie to capitalism is purposefully done. It's purposefully done. A lot of English people and British people, of course, don't think that they're slaves because they don't have physical shackles on, but you literally have mental shackles on. You have mental shackles on, and even when it comes to things like CCTV, okay? So CCTV, let me get this fact. So CCTV, which screen is it? Is it this one? No, this one. There are 7.5 million, actually, sorry, there are 21 million UK CCTV surveillance cameras in operation. 21 million. And there was only 7.5 million recorded back in 2013. And a lot of these companies actually are private companies that have these cameras. So it's actually changing from the government to actually privately owned cameras. And I don't know if people have seen this video. There's this lady who is sitting in her garden, and she literally has her next door neighbor's security cameras pointed into her garden, and she's complained so many times about this camera pointing into her garden. You can't do anything in the UK without somebody filming you. I mean, look how people get out their mobile phones all of the time. Because again, when somebody's getting out their mobile phone, they're literally doing it for the government, by the way. Look at all those people that report others for speeding or, having their mobile phone. Who are they reporting it to? They're slave masters. They're reporting it to the police. They're reporting it to all of these systems, telling these people off constantly because they want to feel like they've got some power there, and they want to be a good little bitch for the government. They want to be good little bitches for the government, for their masters. That's what they're doing. And the funny thing is I had a conversation here with a Brit here in the Muslim country I've moved to, and he's so racist, this guy. But anyway, he said something like, yeah, I shot my own auntie to the government about her benefit claims. And I'm like, and that made me laugh so much. It's like, well, I hope you feel better for that. Your own auntie for claiming benefits, your own family members. I wouldn't report my own family for claiming benefits. If they did something bad like unaliving or some serious crime against another human being, of course I would report their ass. But for benefits? No. Take as much money as you can from the government. Take as much money as possible, because that's stolen wealth anyway. And we're all entitled to take benefits anyway, because look at us all paying taxes and shit. Again, it's supposed to be equally distributed, but it's not. It's not. Love, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more in everything you just said. But in Ireland, so we are told day in and day out that we're this wealthy country. But we had 4 victims of the Catholic Church, elderly people that were child slaves, that had to go on hunger strike outside the government for 50 days so they could get some kinds of support for everything that they've endured through the hands of the Catholic Church and the government.
Was this Bobby Sands?
No,
Bobby Sands? No?
This is literally last month. There was 3 elderly women and an elderly man had to go on hunger strike outside the government for 50 days it lasted, and they were child slaves. They were rented out by farmers from the Catholic Church to work on the grounds of farms and stuff, never got paid anything like that. So what they were looking for was supports of extra bills or funerals or a special medical card. They ended up getting it, but only after 50 days of a hunger strike, and this is in 2026 in Ireland. And to follow up, so the cost of living here is just so ridiculous. People that are on disability, there was many people there that have electric wheelchairs, so they've no other their means to get around is obviously their chair. They need electricity. They were literally choosing to eat or have means to travel. They had to go on a protest. And in Ireland today, the vast majority of people, they're just incapable of seeing that for what it is. The government as of the moment, I think they're talking about giving some supports to the poorest people in society, and it's a direct result of that protest of people that have disabilities. But Irish TikTok is going off in, why should they get this and we not get that? We need help, we need this. And people fail to understand, if you look into our past, there was a system where it was fair and just for everyone. And I understand the world not knowing of our past because of how the systems were created. But for the willful ignorance of Irish people, it's...
Is this a republic you're talking about, or northern, or is it across the board?
No, it's republic.
Republic.
I actually find that funny that did people notice that 4 elderly people went on a hunger strike for 50 days?
I never heard of this.
I heard of it. I heard of that. I heard of that. They mentioned it in my school. It was brief history.
No, this is last month.
What was last month?
I'm sure it wasn't on the news here.
Oh, I didn't know about that. I knew about the one. I knew about the one year.
I only knew because.
I thought he was talking about. Bobby Sands as well, but no. Yeah,
I kind of then wondering. I was under this illusion that TikTok would be doing its thing and it would be getting out there slightly. But I mean, if England are our neighbours and they don't know.
They don't care about Ireland. No one cares. No one cares about Ireland.
One minute, Jamari. There's so much stuff that gets suppressed now on TikTok. Like, really and truly, there is so much stuff that gets suppressed. Ever since this platform was bought by the Americans, we have to go out of our way now to communicate and actually to send people things and to educate ourselves. And I honestly don't know, because TikTok still remains my favorite place to actually get information. I find it to be the most real. When you get the right algorithm and you actually get onto the right side of TikTok, for me it's very amazing. But it is so quick, it is so volatile, and it is so sensitive that if you put in something else, you are immediately dragged off into a terrible area. I asked my parents, for example, my parents are in their 60s and 70s, and I asked them to put TikTok onto their phone. My mother's TikTok was absolutely diabolical, full of AI, full of advertising, full of brain-rotting bullshit. My dad's is not so bad. My dad actually gets a lot of political stuff and we can have some really good conversations, but he still also gets AI on his TikTok as well. And so he's sending me things and I'm constantly having to say, Dad, that's AI. Dad, that's AI. So we do live in a very, very tricky world to navigate. And again, I always bring this up, is that if you're not full-time on social media, you've got no fucking clue what's going on in the world. Like no clue whatsoever, because the manipulation is done so deep. And again, the UK being the birthplace of capitalism, people are just working. They haven't got time to be involved in these conversations, and they haven't got time to actually see what's going on.
You know what news channel you need to check?
1 minute, Jamari, please don't talk over me. This is the second time you've been on my panel. Last time I have to drop you, Jamari. I do remember you coming up last time, Jamari, and you could not just let the people speak, let me speak, because you will get your turn. If you're going to be able to do it, this is the second time now. You will get your turn. I will come to you. Just relax, please. Just relax. So again, like I was saying, see, it's annoying when you get interrupted because you have to repeat yourself. the UK being the birthplace of capitalism, people are worked to the bone that they don't know what's going on. And I think what's really frustrating for us is that we're also having to repeat ourselves. We're also having to repeat ourselves, and we have people that come to this space that don't want to accept the conversation and don't want to actually open their minds up and actually hear what we're trying to discuss in these places. At the same time, I want to make it very clear that my platform is not about saving anybody. It's not about saving English people. It's not about saving British people either. It's just talking truthfully about what's going on in the world, and for people as individuals to navigate yourself through that conversation. And also at the same time, of course, I'm going to be empowering my Black brothers and sisters at the same time. So, Love, is there something else that you wanted to add on to that point? Otherwise, we're going to move to Jamari.
No, I'm happy for it to move on.
Thank you, Love. Okay, Jamari, what would you like to add to the conversation?
No, I just wanted to talk on the topic, really, like, as it says, do English people know they're slaves? Well, yeah, they're mentally, it's mentally slavery, it's mental slavery, which a lot of British people are going through. It's not just English people. It's everyone in the UK. Most people, majority of the population, maybe 95% of the population, are mental slaves. Because they're in this system, they're in this capitalist system, and a lot of them don't want to break out, and a lot of them can't break out. And I think a lot of them, there's no.
Okay, I'm going to fill in the gap until Jamari comes back. Maybe he's got a phone call or his phone's doing something. Oh, Jamari, you're back. Do you want to continue? One on Teacup, yeah.
No, they've given. I'll say that they've given up. A lot of them have lost hope. I even lost hope at one stage as well, but I came to my senses and everything's okay now. But yeah.
Amberine in the comment section has said they don't want to break out of the mental system. I think there is a lot of fear that lives in the UK. Like you've definitely said it. I do think it's very high, the percentage of people who are under mental slavery. And I do feel like because the UK as a business, as a concept, has been wearing people down for so many generations that they don't have any fight left. And I think, again, this is what it's meant to be. This is what's meant to happen, is that, of course, this colonization, all of this karma, all of this bad energy and the bad vibes and the bad history that has been put out in the world has been brought back to the UK. This is why there is no fight left, because it's exhausting. So now people are feeling what is happening in the UK, and it's up to them, again, to leave, perhaps, or to stay and actually change the system. So you have to figure out where your position is. My position, someone said this earlier, is because I voted Brexit, I'm very clear about that, is that I left. I've always wanted to leave the UK because I'm African, for God's sake. I know I'm African, I know I'm Black. The UK is not my home, it's never been my home. I've never felt comfortable there. It's not somewhere where I ever saw myself living for the long-term future. And I worry about my friends and family who are still in the UK, who are still in that system, who are still brainwashed and don't see what's going to happen to the UK. And people are starting to say it now, right? It's like every empire falls. Every empire falls. There is nothing that is going to stop the inevitability of what's going to happen to the UK. There's nothing to stop it. It is a very vulnerable country. Talking about wars, right? The UK, for God's sake, has had British bases bombed in Cyprus. It's sending planes to Qatar, and also that the bomb that came from Iran to, where is it? I can't remember. It's like the same distance to Paris and to London, right? So there's been these kind of little tastes that the UK are getting in regards to final retaliation from the people that have been very oppressed and very hard done by the British Empire and out to the Americas. You can't behave like that for such a long time without there being any retaliation. It can't happen. It can't happen. So, this is why I always say to people, you really have to protect yourself. Don't go with the crowd. Don't be with the sheep. Make your own path. and get the hell out of the country, like get the hell out. But again, when you leave, go and do what the British can't do, what the English can't do, and that's integrate with other societies. Go and learn the language, go and respect people. That's how you gain longevity, and that's how you become part of the global majority. Because at the moment, British people, English people mainly, of course I've put English on the screen, is they are such a minority of people, and they think that they're so the majority, and they're not. That's why it's going to be easy for them to be exited out of the system. And even so, white people are only 7% of the population. That's fucking nothing. It's easy to get rid of them.
Can I ask something as well?
Yeah.
What about the people? Because what I find is a lot of people want to leave, but the number one thing that's holding them back is finances, and then maybe second is fear. So they have fear in their mind, but it's the finances, because a lot of people, well I would say 90% of the people I know, they do have jobs. The jobs are decent jobs, but it's just a month-to-month payment. It's just like a month-to-month living. It's just like a cycle of a living, month-to-month. The third week of the month, the money runs out, they become broke, and then they have to wait for that last week to get any money again. So it's a cycle for them, and they've been doing that for 10 years. I know guys that's been doing the same thing for 10 years, and nothing's changed in their life. It's just, so what about these people? And a lot of people are going through this. This is the thing. They're in the, and things are even getting tighter now. It's even getting worse. The gap is even tightening on them. It was tight 10 years ago, and it's tightening now.
Jamari, what's happened is that British people, English people, because they've been so brainwashed into this system, they don't realise that they had so many privileges. They had thank you, love, thank you for being here. They had so many privileges in form of the British passport. The country that I've moved to now, right, I've got people, I know people, or know of people, let's say, because I don't associate with them. They've been here for like 20 years, 30 years, absolutely living it up on next to nothing. Next to nothing. They've had pennies because, of course, they are economic migrants, not expats. They are economic migrants. So, of course, they're going to countries where the cost of living is more affordable for the British, right? So they're going to these places, they're living it up, they're getting drunk all of the time. But at the same time, what they're not doing is buying property. They're renting. They're not investing, they're not integrating. And it's an example I've brought up on a previous live before about how there are certain people that bought or were renting in Spain, right? And then, of course, Brexit happened and Spain changed the rules. So British people can't spend 6 months of the year back in Spain. It's only 3 months at a time. And then, of course, a lot of the properties were built on lands that they didn't have the right paperwork, or et cetera, et cetera. So British people have had to go back to Britain. The same thing has happened in Cyprus. There's been laws changed where they can't buy property, or it's different percentages or something like that in terms of people that have been living there. They've been living there as expats and retirees, that when the government's changed the laws, they are specifically affected. So they're having to go back to Britain. In the Netherlands, it's the same thing. We don't want to have any of these drunken Brits here. They're also going back to Britain. So a lot of these expats and a lot of these immigrants around the world, British, are having to go back home because that's the way it's supposed to be. They need to be part of Britain in order for it to crumble. That's what I keep saying to immigrants and descendants of immigrants. It's like, please, unless you're Pakistani or India, like that's your land now. That's literally your land now. But everybody else, don't go down with the sinking ship if you can't.
So why do you say Pakistan and India?
One minute, because I'm going to pick up on the point which you said. It's about how people don't have finances. I'm very much inspired by people with those stories that have next to nothing and end up with everything. That's been always my mindset. You'll see a lot of people all the time who have like £10 to their name, and you think about immigrants and descendants of immigrants and all those people that came on Windrush generation. They came to the UK with like £10 in their pocket. These things can be possible, but you just need to have the right mindset to be able to achieve, rather than seeing yourself as someone who's hard done by. Mindset is everything when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you something, because you made you said something. You says that Pakistani and Indians is their land now. So which land are you talking about is their land?
The UK belongs to the Pakistanis, the Indians, and the Muslims. Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Why do I say that? Because the English, they spent 200 years in India and they carved up and created Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. So as terms of reparations for them and the fact that there's a big population there, I'm just going to mute because I've got some background sound. And of course the rise of Islam as well, which again upsets the English people. That is where their second home is going to be. And again, I co-signed this. And Ambreen, exactly, they looted 45 trillion out of India. So where exactly are they going to go to get their money back? They're going to go back to the UK. The population is big enough, the mindset is big enough, and so it's going to turn brown. Black and brown, but mostly brown. Yeah.
So it's going to be a melanated country, you'd say.
Yeah, it already is. And it's already been projected anyway that 2050, the UK is going to be 57% white. It's already been going down from 90%. It's like 87.7. I think some people saying recently it's 81%. So it's already going down. And then it's going to be 57% white. But there's definitely going to be a lot more. And of course, the UK is already incredibly diverse, but it's going to be even more diverse as the years come
But
out.
you know what? I've spoken to white guys about this situation, what you've just said, and their answer to this problem is they will rather destroy the UK than give it to these people.
How are they going to do that then? What's their plan? How are they going to do that?
And that's the problem. I don't know how, but they will rather destroy it.
They talk. This is just talk. They talk. They would have done it by now. They literally would. They don't do anything. They just talk. English people are very weak. Very, very weak.
You don't think they are capable of destroying the country?
No, they're not. They're not capable of destroying the country. They're not. They've been so subservient for so many centuries. I always talk about this, right? I talk about the fact that they literally don't have any industry. They don't create businesses. Their surnames, I always bring up, right? Their surnames are their family trades, by the way, butchers, bakers, etc., 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 right? And they've literally been stolen from by their own government. And now they're all like, oh, the country is this country. The country fell for you lot a long time ago, So exactly how do they think they're going to create some kind of uprising? How are they, if pew-pews were legal in the UK, it would be a different story. Of course, they would probably blaze up everything because they are very emotionally stunted people, like their American cousins. They would probably do the same. But they can't fight. They literally can't fight. Have a conversation with it. I can literally beat them just by talking to them.
But a lot of the English people now, I've spoke to now, they're moving to Poland because they're moving to Poland because Poland has less immigrants. Poland is a country that has hardly any immigrants in it, and they said
why does Poland have less immigrants? Why?
I don't know the answer to that.
The reason why Poland has less immigrants is because nobody was moving to Poland because they couldn't speak Polish. Polish is not a regular language, of course, and Polish people have one of the biggest diasporas in the world. They moved because after the Second World War, of course, they were completely destabilized. They were destabilized. Nobody wanted to go there. Polish people didn't want to live there. And only British people are moving to Poland now because they're like, it's another white country and there's less black and brown people there because we're racist. But of course, the people are going to move around. People are going to move around. You can't stop black and brown people from moving around the world. You can't stop it. I've been to Poland, by the way. I actually really like Poland. I actually spent quite some time in Poland, in Gdansk. I spent 3 weeks there at retreat, and I found the people to be actually very, very lovely. And actually, my nail lady is Polish as well. I like Polish people a lot. So, yeah, I think British people, and again, I always remind the Eastern Europeans and the Balkan people, remember what the British did with Brexit. They didn't want your asses in the UK. Remember why the British voted Brexit? Because they said, we don't like Eastern Europeans. We don't want you here anymore. So please, if I've got any Eastern Europeans here, don't be fooled by the British rhetoric.
Because that's what the English people mostly said to me. They says I'm not the problem. The Eastern Europeans are the problem. But I know deep down, yes, I'm the problem. But they just made it out to be not a colour thing. They just made it out to be is the Eastern Europeans. They were white and they were taking all the jobs.
No, they're very selective in their prejudice and their discrimination, definitely. And they only like any immigrants if they are on the side of English. If a Polish or white person or Ukrainian, whoever, turned around and said something that was against England, you see how quickly they would switch up. They switch up so fast. So yeah, the problem with British people is that they don't actually understand different cultures. All they understand is colour. They only understand things on a very superficial level. Whereas, of course, if you're a country like Poland or any of those Eastern European countries, they've got real history and real oppression, a real struggle. So they know what they're talking about a lot more. A lot more. And I've spent a lot of time in the Balkans and Eastern Europe, and talking to them about politics is actually very refreshing because they know what they're talking about. They really do know what they're talking about. Yeah. Someone says in the chat, stop the boats, save the children. No. How are you going to stop the boats and save the children when your own people are PDF files? Like, which one? Pick one. Pick one. We don't, if you stop the boats, the PDFs are still on the island. They don't need no boats. They could literally walk out of their front door and come to your house. Boats have got nothing to do with it.
Women are not safe in their own homes.
Yeah.
And it was in first page of the newspaper. You can search it in Scotland.
Yeah. Apparently, I've said that every white person is a PDF. Did I say?
It's not. Women aren't safe in their own homes.
Did I just say? Sorry, Logness, just to mute you for a second, and we'll bring you back in. S with the England flag. It's always funny when I see people with flags next to their name because that's literally all they have. They've got no other identity except for a flag. She just called every white person PDF. Did I actually do that? Did I say all white people are PDFs? Did I say that?
No, I never heard that. You said that.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't say that. I said England is where PDFs live. Yeah. So you got triggered by that, S, because maybe perhaps you might be one. It seems to, when you call a PDF out, who gets triggered? It's always the PDFs, the ones who actually think that they're not PDFs and they think that their attraction to children is actually warranted. So S, I think you actually brought up yourself because there's lots of things we're talking about here, and that's where you decided to jump out. Okay, we're going to bring Ems into the conversation. Ems, brother,
hey, folks,
how you doing?
Been a while. Not too bad. Do you know what I find the irony behind all of this is that they don't even have a grasp of their own language. You've got a better grasp of the English language than any of these people. And the fact that they've come to this conclusion saying, oh, you've labelled us all whitey people PDF. No, did you actually understand the words she said? You clearly need to re-educate yourself. Now, when it comes to, I think all of us are in agreement that if you were an employer, you'd obviously prefer an employee who's hardworking. I don't think no one would have any disagreements with that. If you genuinely were an employee, you'd prefer obviously to hire an employee who's hardworking. Now, when it comes to people who are black and brown people, we're put in a position where we are left with no alternative but to work hard. We're left in that. And I've used a personal example here, like one of my friends who was Nigerian, he told me that her sister applied for a job. She got rejected. She reapplied for the same job, used the exact same CV. The only difference she changed was her name, and then she got an interview. Why was that the case? It's because obviously she changed her name. That's literally it. So
people try to say that things like DEI exist and it doesn't exist. Like, yeah, we've had this conversation before, you and I, but we'll bring it back to the people. Is stuff like the CV discrimination thing. It's a thing. Like, it's a thing. There's literally been studies on it. There's been studies on it. Of course, Ems has his own example there as well. And I've said also on the back of that story is that for me, I worked extra hard to get the jobs when I applied. Extra hard. I made sure that people did not forget me when I went to apply for jobs. And again, I have this accent privilege. I have an accent privilege. This colonizer accent was forced onto me through my mother, who was first colonized by the French and then the British. And then it went down to me and my sisters, and my aunties and uncles all have the same accent. So with this accent, and then also with the fact that I literally pushed myself to get these jobs, I had I was never turned down from a job, because there were certain privileges as immigrants and descendants of immigrants that we have to find out about in order to get ourselves in the door. So for example, changing the name. If you have to change your name, do it, get in, because of course if they fire you after, you got a case with ACAS. And there's compensation there, which is going to be a good thing. It's going to be a good thing. Like, I'm seeing so many more cases nowadays of people having so much money when it comes to racial discrimination at work. A lot of compensation is being paid out these days.
And the thing is, folks, because we're put in that position where we're left with no choice but to work hard, that means we're more desirable to employees, which means that we're in the high-paying jobs, we're in the highest salary brackets, our standard of living and quality of life have improved. I mean, you have to ask yourself, why is it that the vast majority of properties in London are owned by Indians? Because they're put in the position where they work hard, because they don't have the privilege that white people do. White people obviously have privilege, which means that they're put in a position where they don't have to put in the same kind of effort to secure a job. Whereas us, people from our background, we're put in that position where we're left with no choice but to put in the effort, put in the hard work.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we don't have that privilege.
We don't, and this is Beth said it again. Like, this is what we know, is that we don't have DEI in the UK. We have the Equality Act, which is vastly different, vastly different.
Do you know what, Fox?
Sorry, 1 minute, Ems. 1 minute, because Loch Ness, I don't know if you've got something related to this conversation at Loch Ness, or otherwise I'll go back to Ems and then I'll bring you back after.
Yeah, so I have been doing some projects relating to discrimination, racism, and Finnish systems in Scotland. What kind of strived at was I was looking into the Tinker experiments was last year or year before, and what happened to the Scottish travellers, Indigenous people of Scotland. Mm-hmm. And that was committed by the British government. So you can look into it. The Tinker experiments was the early 1940s. But I've seen a pattern in that of when I was speaking to my friends who are of colour, and they might have applied for jobs, and I even seen it working in corporations. And one thing is the CV bias. So I've been looking into unconscious bias, and what else was it? Just with this narrative being pushed, like, oh, well, okay, if somebody's speaking a different way, like I'm a more, I was kind of drilled into speaking more Queen's English when I was younger. There was things that I would say in Scots, so I'm bilingual in a way, like I can speak Scots and I can speak English. So when I'm speaking here, I'm speaking more fluently in English, and it was, when you're looking into the systems, how people who spoke Gaelic were treated in Scotland, people who spoke Scots were treated in Scotland. So there is systematic oppression, but then when you look deeper into it, it's systematic. Is it systemic or systematic racism as well? So the systems is built in a way that are going to oppress people, and it's a classism system, and it itself as well. So they see somebody who's Scots, for instance, that there's different accents and dialects in Scots. Yeah. And they're seen as illiterate. I was seen as illiterate because I was speaking to somebody in Scots, and they said, oh.
There's also, and it's interesting as well. It's like I was involved in a conversation recently, or not involved, but I saw a conversation just about how even, and I don't know if there's what the word actually would be, like how English people just find the Scottish accent quote unquote aggressive, right? So like there was a conversation that I saw, because basically there was somebody who was only really triggered by the people that had different accents that sounded more of like Britain, right? And I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but just what you're saying is really bringing that conversation back to me about this internal bias that, of course, English people have that they don't seem to realise. And it's so funny, like, you know, obviously you probably brought that up because I brought up my accent. And it's always interesting to me, being a black person, being somebody of African descent and having this accent, I've seen the way that English people are triggered by me having this accent. Like in the comment section earlier, oh, listen to the way that she speaks, she sounds English. And, you know, I come to this Muslim country here, and I have British people who have got more northern accents, because actually there's a lot more northern people here, is that they look at me like, how the hell are you talking better English than I am? And my parents have come to visit as well here, and also the neighbours who are British. They say to my parents things like, oh, well, it really does pay to be educated, doesn't it? Like, they're looking at our people, the fact that we're educated. We grew up in the same system as you, hello? We grew up in the same education system as you, and yet you're thinking that we have some kind of advantage over you? No, it's a cultural thing. Like Emza said, we've literally had to work so hard in this system that is not for us. But that's just our culture. That's just the way that things are. Look,
this has been really investigated because Scotland, when you think of the geography of Scotland, we've got many islands, we've got a lot of rural areas, so we have loads of different accents. And it was Edinburgh University that started doing training on accent prejudice. And there's stories, so if you look into the Scottish accent prejudice, there's stories of somebody from the Shetland Isles who was studying in Edinburgh, and they got told that, oh, their accent wasn't good enough. And I actually, if you look at the page, I have spoken this as well about accent prejudice, about discrimination. But one thing that I am doing just now is racism, so I'm taking it away from like the whole Scottishness as well, because hearing my friends' stories, it's actually quite sad to see the rise of the far right and how people are treated. So racism is there, but it's there in the systems, and you know that. John Davidson, he's got Tourette's, but the way the BBC treated him, and not only treated him, but created a big division, you know, by not cutting out a word that was said.
Lord have mercy. Let me not talk about John Davidson, because this conversation as a black person, we talked about this for about a week or so, the varying different aspects of it. Of course, me from a black perspective, the amount of ableism that actually came about from the white community, I have to say, was horrific. What pissed me off so much about this, you basically brought this up, Loch Ness, so I have to talk about it now, is I had so many conversations on this platform. I held multiple lives about this conversation. First of all, John Davidson was not protected, of course, by the BBC. He was not. He told the BBC that he obviously had particular slurs and particular tics. He told them that. They refused, the BBC and the BAFTAs, to mute him. The studio, Warner Brothers, had asked them to edit the show. They didn't. So John Davidson was immediately and purposely put into this vulnerable position. However, as time goes on, and you look into the gentleman, and you look into what he actually did, and you look at the show itself, he only had racial tics towards black people. That was a very diverse event. There was even people like Warwick Davis, nothing was said to him. Nothing homophobic was actually said to Alan Cummings. Nothing racial was said to any other ethnic group. Nothing with anybody else that had any other disabilities was said. All he said was generic terms like F off and this is boring. Apparently, did he say the P word? I never heard that report. No, nothing that I ever heard, Amberine, did he actually say that. So, and then the fact was, he never came out and apologized to the people he said the word to. He never apologized to the black community. And even in his last statement was just, I apologize to anyone who was affected. He didn't name anybody. He didn't name the thing. Yeah, Alan Cummings, he was given a scripted speech by the BAFTAs, he was. And actually, Alan Cummings came out after and he said, he made his own apology, even though it was not his place. He said, I apologise that the black community heard this word that was echoed around the world, and I apologise to the Tourette's community. By the way, black people were also in both communities. Hello, the black community and the Tourette's community. Why were people were suddenly separating those two communities? But John Davidson is racist. He's a racist person. And the thing that pissed me off the most is that all of a sudden you couldn't be a person who had a disability and be racist. He was racist. The man was racist and he had Tourette's.
You know, when Alan Cummings gave the apology and he said, and I apologize if anyone was offended. If, I'm sorry, it's not your place to say if, because that slur does not have any meaning or effect on you. So for you to say if, it's basically watering down the experience that slur has on that particular community.
But again, that wasn't his fault. That was the BBC's and BAFTAs who gave him the script to say, like I said, after he made his own personal apology, even though it was not his place to do so, because nobody was actually making any decent apologies. Nobody was making any apologies to those who were affected. Yeah. Loch Ness, you brought up.
With that, I was actually investigating the BBC, and they are awful biased. They are unionist as well, so when it came to the Scottish independence, they issued a lot of propaganda. But when we look overall at the BBC, we can see how racist they are with like shows like Little Britain. You know, there's reasons why that's not allowed in telly. They actually had blackface on it, and that's vile. And we can even look outside of the UK, but like looking into the UK, I am doing investigations into Scotland about discrimination against those of colour or accents as well. And I've been putting in some freedom of information requests, and I feel like I'm not getting anywhere, because I asked each council within Scotland, okay, in the last 5 years, because I've seen it myself, I see a lot of racism in Scotland coming from the far right, like Nigel Farage and Tommy Robertson and all that crew. So I was curious to see what the demographic rise. There's reports of racism risen throughout the councils, and then I didn't get much information back. It was maybe 5 cases was reported within the past 5 years, and I wanted to go further with that, but I feel like I'm at a stagnant point, because it's not what I was looking for, because the statistics what they have doesn't show what I'm seeing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I mean, this is a big broadcasting corporation that manipulates and controls so much. And on that front, like talking about the John Davidson thing, it was very apparent that, again, English people and white people just wanted to uphold the system of racism in their slavery, right? The fact that they literally came out and was defending John and being like, you need to watch the movie, and we all know about Tourette's and everybody else doesn't know anything about Tourette's. Like, the whole thing was so ridiculous, and it was very frustrating for us. Like very, very, very frustrating for us. And I think that's just really, the BBC is crap. And again, those people who knew about what Jimmy Savile was doing, who knew about Hugh Edwards, but still did not cancel their TV license, again, upholds the fact that we think that English people love paedophilia. We've seen the way that they're not really challenging Prince Andrew, that they still love King Charles, they still love the fact that the royal family covered up a lot of this shit. And the fact of the matter is, some of this stuff was happening in the UK, by the way, in the royal buildings. It was happening in the country. In the country. Like, I've even brought up before the fact that there's a boy who is buried. The Ethiopian prince is buried in Windsor Castle. The Ethiopians asked to have the boy's body back, but they refused because they freaking ate it. They ate it. I was even reading today, actually, about the guys, I don't know if you know the guy, Oludor Equiano. He was actually a freed enslaved man, one of the first enslaved free men. And he wrote a book. He was actually part of the Sons of Africa. And in his book, he actually talks about the European cannibalism in there. He talks about the fact that Africans were made fat so they could actually be eaten. This is not even the book of the Delectable Negro. This is his own book. He was a British slave, by the way. He was British. Africans were fattened by the white man so they could be consumed. So there's loads of stuff that people do. There's loads of things that English people continue to perpetuate because they are slaves. They are enslaved by the mindset, like Jamari said earlier. They're enslaved mentally. They're enslaved also physically to the land. So you see a lot of people say, if you don't like it, leave. Yeah, I did leave, but it sucks for you because you can't leave. You're mentally stuck on the island of misery. You could leave if you want to, maybe, find a way. But a lot of these people, again, would rather defend this bullshit system because they are slaves. Because they are slaves. It's really quite ridiculous, the depth of all this stuff. I think I've got a last, so actually, again, on the topic of slavery, okay, so people don't seem to realise just how much slavery was actually in Britain. Oh, you can't see this background, it's absolutely terrible. So modern slavery in the UK. If anyone has been to an airport recently, you may have seen posters up about modern slavery and how prevalent it actually is in the UK. So it's suggested that they're actually up to about 122,000 people, maybe about 130,000 people who are living in modern slavery in the UK. Right. And so Zipangu is in the chat is saying modern slavery is much more prevalent in other countries. Yeah. In Korea, it has 2,000 years of slavery in Korea. In Russia, in Ukraine, in Mauritania, in Eritrea, in Turkey, these other countries. But again, Russia, Ukraine, and the UK have very, very big numbers as well. And the problem is when you start to deflect, you don't see the problem. Okay, so this is 122,000, maybe up to 130,000 people in the UK. So as it says down here, it exists in many forms, right, including trafficking, such as criminal activities such as cannabis farming, sexual exploitation, forced labour on farms, nail bars, car washes, all of these things that are in the UK that you need to be careful of and you need to actually be looking at, right? You have to actually look at this stuff because this is suggested. This is suggested. And we're seeing a lot of people who are actually being arrested from trafficking into the Asias. So the drug trafficking, right? You see this happens a lot of the time. And that is actually increasing. So the fact that there is an explosion.
See the Catholic Church as well. See when you were talking about that traffic in the Catholic Church.
My point, please, Loch Ness, please let me finish my point. So you've got banged up abroad. There is a massive explosion of Brits being arrested over alleged drug smuggling, which happens a lot of the time. We see them constantly being arrested in Thailand, in Bali, and in Spain, actually. It happens a lot in Spain. So this, again, is a modern type of slavery. People are being manipulated. People are being trafficked. People have to be more aware of the forms of slavery which it comes in. More aware. And I muted the person who just said that there was 18 million slaves in India, right? I just moved that. I haven't seen that number. In all the numbers that I've seen, it's 2 million in Korea. So he's just made that up. It's actually not on there. If you go to it's called Walk Free, the Modern Slavery Index. And actually I'm going to bring that up next. This is Beth. The Modern Slavery Index will actually tell you how many people are actually enslaved. So it's 2 million in Korea. Actually, let me just get it up right now so I can tell you, because we don't like false information on here. Modern Slavery Index, and I'll tell you the actual number. So there's something called prevalency and there's something called actual slavery. So, exactly. So you're not only deflecting, you're spreading misinformation. That's why they've actually been muted. Let me get the background back up and I will get you guys the facts right here. So if you go to walkfree.org/global slavery index, they've actually measured it. It's actually the only website that I ever use. It's actually a really fantastic website and it's very interactive. So again, in North Korea, it actually has the biggest prevalency of slavery. Let me just change the background so you can see some stuff. So the prevalence is number one. It actually has 2.69 million people in slavery. Okay, so let me show you these statistics, because people will bring up places like Africa, but actually the number of people in these countries is a lot lower than other countries. Let me make myself on the big screen a minute. Let me take that off so you can see the numbers, even though they're going to be backwards. Okay, so view, show it in full screen. So again, this is the Walk Free website. You'll see the numbers here, even though they will be backwards. So the first one you see is North Korea. It's 2.6 million. Okay, you see that there? Let me move this light. The second is Eritrea, but you see it's 320,000. Third, Mauritania, 149,000. Saudi Arabia, 740,000. Turkey has 1.3 million. Tajikistan, 133,000, UAE, 132,000, Russia, 1.89 million, Afghanistan, 505,000, Kuwait, 55,000. And if you go to the next country underneath, it's Ukraine. It's Ukraine. So again, the biggest numbers are in North Korea, Turkey, and Russia. And those are countries that people don't even talk about. They keep talking about Africa. They keep talking about India. They keep talking about those countries and not actually realizing where you actually need to focus. And so the UK does have very good government response, by the way, to modern slavery. It has a very good government response. But the problem is that in terms of, I think, terms of the resources, let me just go to the global findings part so I can show you guys this bit. It takes a long time. It's a very slow site to load, very slow site to load. While that's loading, we'll just let that run for a little bit. But yes, we can talk about the lady who was actually kept in slavery for 25 years, because I saw you guys bring that up in the chat, and that's actually also in my other window as well. I can bring that up in the meantime, actually, while that's loading. So there was Mandy Wixon, who kept a vulnerable victim as a slave for 13 years. So you guys have seen this lady, right? This woman was heavily disabled. She was abused so much. So much. It says that, she was sentenced to 13 years, but she was actually kept as a slave for 25 years. Yeah, and I can read you some excerpts from the case, because it really is horrendous. Okay. So she's been sentenced for 13 years. Handing down this sentence, the judge tells Wixon she cruelly and persistently held the victim captive and crushed her spirit. The victim, who was the BBC is calling Kay, was made to clean Wixon's overcrowded home in Tewkesbury, Gloucestershire, and was forced to live off scraps. The abuse had a significant impact on Kay, prosecution, adding she will live with the effects of the trauma for the rest of her life. And there's other really horrific things that she was doing. She was, of course, doing everything. She was looking after the children, all the housework, cleaning, ironing, everything. She was a proper slave. She also had, I can't go into the details because I don't want the life to get flagged, is that she was obviously physically aid during this time as well, heavily. She was also denied, of course, her freedom, made to live in appalling physical and emotional conditions, and forced to act on the whim of a woman who imprisoned her. Over the years of captivity, she was only able to keep track by each passing Christmas, and was left to live off crumbs that Wixon provided, while suffering unimaginable abuse and experiencing no acts of kindness at all. So she was completely sheltered from the world. It's absolutely horrific. And this is, of course, a case that has happened in the UK. This is an English woman enslaving somebody. English people were enslavers. And so I've talked about how English people are slaves. We can also talk about, and we'll wrap this conversation up very shortly, actually, we'll come to the end, where English people also were still acting like the enslavers. Very much so. I've talked about it on this panel, on this live before, where they're always trying to control what everybody else is doing. I bring up the example of when, the parking space stuff. Have you got a right to park here? Show me your identification. Who are you? Who are you? We don't owe these people shit. We don't owe these people shit. These people think that they have a control because they have no control in the rest of their lives at all. At all. So they really try so hard to be slave owners, to be slave masters, because they are slaves themselves. This is up to us to surpass them. Of course, in the UK, surpass them by leaving. You see how already they get threatened by the fact that you're educated, that you are able to have ambition, able to have a good job. All of these things in their insecurity makes them think that they're further down the ladder, which they actually are. This is the slave mindset that's actually coming out in full force now. It's really, really coming out. And Ambreen, good to see you. It's in their culture to power trip and control us. They can F off. Exactly. Ambreen, I don't know if you saw my message. Please check your DMs after this. Please check your DMs. Loch Ness, you wanted to add some things.
Just when you were talking about human trafficking before, people need to investigate the institutional abuse of children in these areas and worldwide as well through the Catholic Church, and not even the Catholic Church, the churches itself. So the investigations went into the Catholic Church in Scotland, and we've seen that there was children sent from Ireland into Scotland and were abused under the same systems. And while the investigations did go, on the media and in newspapers and that, these other investigations with the Church of Scotland didn't go as much. And if you look into institutions like care homes, they're funded, the ones that's funded by the Church of Scotland, similar things did happen. I wouldn't say it was to the same degree, but one case is one case too many when I say that, and I think we have to remember that these institutions do not work for the people. While they're quoted as all social services, helping the social, when people are talking about migrants, like harassing children or women and all that, I think people derail it, and they need to look closer into the institutions, closer into the organisations. And there is the Christian Brotherhood, I think, and there's articles that you can read in papers through the investigations, and you would see it was happening in England, it was happening in Ireland and Scotland, I think it was India, in America, in Canada. So these are children that are being shipped out illegally. And there's some investigations currently in the UK about the illegal adoptions. I think you've seen it in Westminster. It was last week, 2 weeks ago. And I think it is a really, hard topic. Yeah. But I think people need to bring attention to it and actually stop derailing it and saying, it's migrants, it's this and that.
I'm glad you brought up the child part, because I didn't actually bring that bit up, is that there are a significant amount of children that are actually enslaved as well. This is globally, of course, but in the UK as well. And I think it's really frustrating, again, how there's always this constant deflection onto these other things. And also we live in that society where, English people will say, well, it's not as bad as over there. It's not as bad as over there. Just because something is not as bad as over there doesn't mean that it's a problem that doesn't need addressing. All of this stuff needs to really understand that this happens again on your doorstep. This is something that really needs to be looked at. Kruger says we're all slaves, just in case you all didn't realise. It is global. Thank you, Fox. I'm not a slave, I have to say, because anybody who's had like a spiritual awakening and can see outside of the matrix, who has left the countries of colonization, who can talk about all these topics, is no longer a slave. Kruger, I'm pretty sure you're no longer a slave either. Or maybe actually you live in the UK still, so it's, that's of course an enslaved system. But again, like Jamari brought up earlier, is like we talked about, mental slavery is a big part of it. It's not just physical slavery, it is mental slavery. That is a huge, huge part that people don't want to address and don't want to accept. And English people are very much mentally enslaved. Right, thank you so much, everybody. We're going to end the live there. Really appreciate you guys coming by and having the conversation. Thank you, Loch Ness. Thank you. You've been up since the beginning. Thank you so much for coming up.
Oh, really? Is that when you started the live?
Yeah, you were like the first to come up.
I feel a bit awkward talking on Opal panels. If everybody watching, I'm probably recording me now.
Thank you so much for coming up.
You take care of yourself, and it was lovely chatting to you.
And you too. You taught us so much about Scotland. There's so many things that I didn't know about as well. And I actually do want to do a Scottish, Welsh and Irish panel, like for real, and English, to talk more about the history of you guys. And again, of course, you guys spoke about it a little bit, which I really appreciate, but I want to do a specific panel talking about Britain and just how difficult it actually is for the people of Scotland, Ireland and Wales. So hopefully you would come back one day if I do that panel, because I really want to do it. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Loch Ness. Thank you. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Thank you to my mods. As usual, you guys are absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. for being part of the conversation. Yeah, this is Beth. You can come up and talk about your great-great-grandfather. Absolutely. Thank you, Ella, for always being here. Paulie as well, if he's still here, is another mod of mine now, so I'm really glad that he's part of the team. You know, again, thank you so much for everybody down there. Thank you, MT. I'm glad that you enjoyed the conversation. Really appreciate you being here. Who else is here that I can say hello to before I go? Guys, Skype is here. Guys, give me a wave in the chat so you're here so I can give you a shout out before we go. Give me a little wave or a hey or a thumbs up. CP3D is here. Who else is here? You and Paulie were tag teaming. Amazing. Excellent. Who else is here in the chat? Otherwise, I'm going to log off like real quick. Amjad. No, I finished now. I finished, Amjad. We are actually finished the conversation now because I'm tired. I'm tired. So I'm going to go to bed. Nobody else is here, apparently. There's people in the room, but nobody else is saying anything. Okay. Bees Burger, hi. Good to see you. Right, guys, and I will see you again another time. No, Amjad, we've finished the conversation. Take care, guys. Until next time. Bye.